He already died once, sacrificed himself to save the 4 friends he loved most, and the world called him a legend, Toa of the Miracles. So why is he crying alone in the dark, abandoned by his own parents? Because dying as a hero doesn't mean fate is done with you. Reincarnated, with no memories wiped, his legendary power failing, and a pack of wolves closing in. Until, from the night sky, comes the last thing that would save a human baby, a vampire. Today, we're covering Toa's full story. Stick around. By the end, you'll understand why an entire kingdom renamed its capital after a dead 10-year-old boy. Let's get into it.
The demon lord roared, its armored body crackling with dark energy as light burst from a blade lodged in its skull. Heroines watched from afar, unsure if the beast had truly fallen. It rose again, mocking their belief that the fight was over. Then it began to self-destruct, threatening to take them all with it. A young woman feared she wouldn't finish her spell in time, as a shadow moved to protect her. An earth barrier rose just in time, summoned by a legendary shadow hero known for his miracles. He was called the glue that held the hero's party together. He was also known as the beloved of an elf and a succubus. He earned his title through selfless devotion, having died once before protecting his friends decades earlier, now reborn with that memory intact. The final image showed a vast, cracked landscape, dark energy still surging across the horizon. Exhausted, he finally rested, his body drained of strength as he lay resting against the princess, relieved to see her safe. Coughing, a companion revealed she had used her power to save everyone from the explosion. Badly wounded, he lay in their arms, saying it had all been worth it. Surrounded by the friends he loved, he felt this was the best place to die. With his last breath, he confessed he had died once before and was secretly a reincarnator, while his friends broke down, begging him not to dare give up. He recalled how he'd gained his miraculous power the moment he died in his old world and was reborn into this one. A violent, bloodied struggle played out as death closed in on him. His friends wept, overwhelmed with grief as they watched him slip away. Holding him close, one friend whispered how warm it felt, grateful she'd had the chance to protect everyone, even as she feared what would happen once he was gone. Another, tears streaming, vowed that even if it meant selling her soul through forbidden research, she would drag him back from the depths of hell itself. In tears, she vowed that even if he vanished, they would remain together forever, whether it was all just a dream or an illusion. Overwhelmed by the weight of their love, he smiled through the pain and said his goodbyes as he faded away. His consciousness dissolved into fragments, everyone's faces flashing before him as he let go. His soul crossed into another world entirely, drifting toward a forest near a royal capital. There, his new parents, rough and reluctant, coldly remarked that he shouldn't blame them for being born as their child. Newborn and helpless, he was met with nothing but cold indifference, his cries ignored as he realized just how unwanted he was. Left behind in the dark forest, he could only babble helplessly, unable to call out or make anyone understand his distress. Furious at his rock-bottom start yet again, he raged silently at the absurdity of being reincarnated only to be abandoned right after birth. Alone and starving, he begged to be allowed to simply pass away in peace, wondering why fate kept dealing him such cruelty. Then, out of the shadows, a snarling wolf appeared, baring its teeth as it closed in on the defenseless child. A pack of snarling wolves closed in on the helpless infant, growling and baring their fangs in the darkness. In desperation, he prayed for a miracle to save him, but silence answered. Nothing happened. Certain he was about to be devoured, he resigned himself to becoming the wolves' next meal. His future friends and allies were revealed: a witch, a healer, a princess, and a hero, each destined to become part of his life. Then, from the night sky, a winged demonic silhouette descended, drawn by his desperate cry for help. The mysterious figure landed close by, her presence looming protectively over him. A succubus-like winged woman stood revealed, her sharp eyes fixed on the wolves as bats swirled around her.
In an instant, she struck down the wolves with a swift, decisive slash. Trembling, he wondered if he had truly been saved, as the surviving wolves backed away in fear. The vampire introduced herself as Astrophia Reinstall, admitting it was likely meaningless to a baby, but choosing to do so anyway.
Startled by the immense pressure she gave off, he privately admitted she felt as intimidating as a demon king, though outwardly he only babbled. Watching him cling to her instinctively, she noted how strange it was that vampires and humans were natural enemies, yet here he was seeking her comfort. She reflected on how vampires hunted humans for blood and were in turn hunted by the church, before catching herself and deciding not to voice such dark truths to the baby. Despite everything, she found herself troubled by a strange guilt, feeling as though his very existence beside her was somehow sinful, right before she nearly dropped him off the cliff in shock. Flying through the night sky with him in her arms, she cooed over how impossibly cute he was, calling it almost sinful in itself. She promised to remain by his side, vowing to protect him until he could stand on his own. Cradled against her, he buried himself in her affection, while she reasoned that raising him with love would be different from merely keeping him like livestock. She vowed that if she were ever to fail him and let him die, she would follow him even in death. In that same breath, she swore they would face death together, refusing to let him go through anything alone. Overwhelmed with resolve, he silently swore to himself that no matter what means it took, he would protect her. Determined, he insisted to himself that any method was acceptable if it meant keeping her safe.
Picturing a future battle, he imagined proving to his friends that he was capable of protecting them. Emotion welled up as he clung to that vow, his small face full of quiet determination. Looking at her, he vowed once more that he would show her he could protect her too. Tears welled in his eyes, overwhelmed by the depth of feeling behind that promise. Confused by his crying, she wondered aloud whether he was hungry or needed a diaper change, unable to understand his thoughts. Touched deeply by her care, he found himself overwhelmed with emotion at being looked after by someone like her. Alone under the moonlight, he called out softly for her, addressing her as his mother. She answered warmly, confirming with a smile that yes, he truly was her child. A lone house stood atop a hill under the moonlight, cut off from the world. Lying awake, he realized this world's map resembled his old kingdom's, yet was different. Proof he'd truly been reborn elsewhere. He learned vampires once killed each other over blood, but she promised never to harm a human, especially not her own child, since she got blood from the black market. Though only an hour had passed since saying goodbye to his old friends, meeting her already felt like a miracle, and he resolved to walk a new path. Her thoughts turned to Toa of the Miracles, a shadow hero who died protecting his friends against the Demon King, someone this child oddly reminded her of. He lay quietly, lost in thought, memories and new feelings tangled together. She mused privately on the legend of Toa and a Demon King's fall, unaware how closely it mirrored the baby in her arms. Legend told of a shadow hero who aided the elite champions with miraculous power, ultimately sacrificing himself to defeat the Demon King, his memory kept in a coffin passed down through time. Those who knew him remembered him fondly, beloved of an elf and succubus, mediator of the hero's party, and the hero's closest friend. Startled, she looked down as he finally spoke his name aloud, Toa. Now grown, he recalled how people had once praised him with the title, Toa of the Miracles, believing this new land unfamiliar to him, until he began to notice otherwise. He realized with a shock that this world somehow already knew him. Elsewhere, a woman reacted with sudden surprise, sensing something unexpected as she stood before a grand estate. She shivered and gasped, overwhelmed by an inexplicable feeling stirring within her. Her heart raced strangely as she wondered aloud whether her old friend Toa, far away, might be feeling the same unexplained sensation. Certain he was somehow near, she reached out, insisting that Toa had to be right there with them. Meanwhile, his old friends bantered under the shade of a parasol, one teasing that there was no room left for their perverted hero companion. They pestered him to use his miracle powers for their comfort, complaining that being best friends meant he owed them some shade, though he protested he wasn't just a convenient tool. Reluctantly summoning his power anyway, he conjured up a small rain cloud to cool everyone off. The scene shifted to the royal capital of Luca, revealing the grand Castletown estate belonging to Lilith. Sitting alone at an elegant table, she offered thanks before the meal, quietly toasting to life as she prepared to eat. Pouring wine, she reminisced about the memories tied to that particular brand, recalling how they'd all shared it together on their old journey. Distracted by memory, she accidentally spilled the wine, apologizing softly to no one in the empty room.
Overwhelmed by nostalgia, she began to cry as she cleaned up the spill, apologizing through her tears for the sudden emotion.
Alone at the table, she spoke tenderly to an empty chair, confessing her love for her long-lost husband, Towa. She recalled the old legend once more, the tale of the shadow hero known as Towa of the Miracles. The story told how he had supported the hero's party with his miraculous power, leading them to swift victories, until finally cornering the Demon King, who then chose to self-destruct in a final act of desperation. It was said that in his final moment, Towa's expression was peaceful, having sacrificed himself by absorbing the full force of that explosion. He had done so to protect his 4 beloved companions, his closest friends from that journey, sparing their lives at the cost of his own. Having saved them all, he was believed to have departed the world completely at peace. The succubus Lilith, the elf Selen, Princess Liliana, and the hero Arios left behind to carry his memory. Astonishingly, after despairing over being abandoned by his human parents, Towa found himself taken in and safely cared for by a vampire 10 years after his original death. Testing whether his old miracle power still worked, he was disappointed to find no change at all, wondering if it had truly vanished after being reincarnated once more. Watching her feed him, he privately questioned whether he'd lost his powers in the process of rebirth, and whether being found by her had merely been coincidence rather than fate. He learned she had to either drink human blood directly or purchase spare blood in advance, feeling guilty that raising him meant such hassle instead of something as simple as regular milk. She confided that though many rough men had once pursued her, none ever satisfied her, leaving her wishing she could have fed him with her own milk instead.
Shocked by details he clearly wasn't meant to hear, he learned she was still a virgin, had never dated anyone, and knew nothing of childbirth. She admitted bitterly that her experiences had left her unable to trust men at all. Privately panicking, he worried to himself that being secretly an 18-year-old man on the inside would surely get him killed if she ever discovered the truth. Feeling guilty for hiding his true adult mind, he apologized silently in his thoughts, while she affectionately reassured him that nothing could ever make her hate her innocent, precious little boy. Startled by a sudden piercing look from her, he panicked internally, terrified she'd somehow seen through his secret. A jagged burst of light streaks across the sky as a bold title flashes into view. A powerful blast suddenly rips through a quiet house, leaving it shattered. An elegant vampiric woman says she's come to fetch someone, then rushes to a house under moonlight, tensing as she finds a shadowy figure looming over a woman and child. A cocky young man boasts that the woman will belong to him today. She coolly refuses to give up the child, mocking the threat and warning him never to touch her or her family. He spits a mocking nickname, enraging her, while the child watches in confusion. The arrogant suitor crashes down defeated as onlookers mock the odd sight of a vampire and human posing as family. Undeterred, he proposes marriage, urging her to kill the child and come with him, as others lament how far the once feared future vampire queen has fallen. He denies feeling jealous of the child, but she coldly presses him on it. Calmly, she says she isn't mocking him. She simply lost all patience after 100 years of this. A frenzy of slashing blows erupts as the man attacks with wild fury, each strike met with shock and scrambling evasion. Wielding a massive crescent blade, he unleashes a devastating attack he calls his blood blade as the child watches nearby. Amid the chaos, the woman calmly comforts the startled child in her arms, her sharp glare fixed on the attacker. Enraged by her defiance, the man snarls that he'll have his way with her by force after dealing with the brat, lunging forward in fury. Gripped by killing intent, the woman's eyes go wide with fury as she vows to end the man who threatened her child. In an instant, she summons a massive scythe and cuts him down with overwhelming power, ending the fight in a single deadly strike. The child marvels in delight at the fearsome weapon while she stands victorious, scythe in hand. She reflects that being blessed with a child has truly made her stronger, cradling the baby close and warning that she'll never forgive anyone who dares harm him. Nearby, another figure crushes something underfoot, smirking as she remarks on how much the woman has changed. Walking away with the child, the woman apologizes for exposing him to something unpleasant, but he reassures her that she saved him again. Observing the vampires around her, she coldly declares that male vampires like them are nothing but rusted, useless relics. Fia held the baby close as her fangs betrayed her hunger,
her breathing ragged as she fought to suppress the urge to feed, murmuring reassurances between labored gasps. She explained to herself that the vampiric bloodlust was worse than usual that night, having drawn on her power earlier, and told herself she would be fine once she reached the blood she kept stored at home. Back at the house, she reminded herself she usually sourced blood from the black market rather than resorting to anything drastic, just as a distant howl echoed outside. To her horror, she discovered that her stockpiled blood had been destroyed, leaving her with nothing to satisfy the mounted hunger clawing at her control. Panic set in as she realized the danger of her own strength overwhelming her judgment, refusing to even consider drinking from the child in her arms, despite the child innocently offering himself. In the darkness, she agonized over whether draining blood from such a small baby could kill him, but told herself there was no time left to hesitate.
Since her miraculous power wasn't available to rely on, she resolved that this was her only remaining option, even as she declared she could never fully trust others. The baby, meanwhile, cried out that he wanted to save her no matter the cost. Overwhelmed with emotion, she broke down as the baby urged her to trust him, encouraging her to go through with it. The baby eagerly presented himself, pricking his own finger to offer his blood, while she stared at him in stunned silence. Startled by the sight, she accepted the offering, drinking from him and quietly thanking him for his sacrifice. She cried out sharply as she drank, the sensation overwhelming her senses while the baby watched, startled by her reaction. Her cries continued, the feeding leaving her trembling and flushed as the moment stretched on. Sitting alone under a flash of light, he sensed something profound shift within him, as if the miracle power he'd relied on for so long had finally slipped away. Something felt different afterward, and though the bloodlust had eased, Fia noticed a strange change in herself as she held him close. She suddenly realized the truth, startled to recognize him as the source of what she'd felt, while he flinched under her searching touch. Confused by the thunder outside, she declared with joy that she might have found her future husband, while the baby, understanding nothing, was simply glad she'd recovered. They survived the storm together, Fia mending the house with magic before stepping out to patch up the exterior herself. She imagined a future surrounded by the love of 3 people, smiling to herself at the thought. Lost in fantasy, she pictured it striking her like a storm, her thoughts drifting into something far more intimate. She admitted she never could have imagined, back then, where that fantasy would eventually lead. Steam rose around her as she bathed, lost in thought about something she could never have imagined. She mused that she and the child would now be bound together by fate's mark, still adjusting to the strange revelation. Deciding she should keep the truth secret for the child's own good, she resolved to quickly choose him a proper name. She wished for something truly wonderful, a special name worthy of the beloved child she now called her own. She proudly introduced herself as Estrefia Renstall, a rising vampire queen, while the baby listened from the next room. She scooped him up to sleep beside her, and though he protested about the impropriety, he secretly felt lucky to have such a strong, cool mother. Delighted by his cuteness, she gushed over him affectionately as he squirmed in her arms. She held him close, the warmth between them oddly nostalgic and tender. Charmed by the closeness, she declared they should share this affection every single day, insisting it was simply what parents and children did. His thoughts drifted back to his past life, to a campsite on the road to the Demon King's castle, memories surfacing unexpectedly. She leaned in close, intent clear, as he froze, wide-eyed in shock. Startled, Toa asked what she was doing. Lilith explained she'd been suppressing a dangerous succubus urge by draining his energy instead. He winced, clearly stung by the topic. He admitted hiding it from her, while Selen revealed she'd been doing the same, joking she could drain an entire forest. Arios cheerfully offered himself as a substitute partner, unimpressed looks all around. The other snapped that nobody asked for him since he already had his own partner. Lilith and Selen mused about discussing it with Toa more, prompting Liliana to complain about her foolish partner. The girls teased each other over jealousy before Liliana and Arios made up with a handshake. Toa hesitated, asking if it really had to be him, while the girls promised to help in an emergency. Both answered eagerly, insisting it absolutely had to be him. She giggled, admitting she wanted to kiss him precisely because it was him, savoring the joy of motherhood. He recalled how even in his past life with 2 beauties like Lilith and Selen as partners, he'd never managed a real kiss, aching at the memory of his own cowardice. Fia cooed over his cuteness, unaware of his inner turmoil as he sat lost in regret.
Startled, he wondered if he could finally act on it now, his thoughts racing as she suddenly noticed something off about him. She leaned in and kissed him properly, the moment landing with unexpected intensity. Afterward, they lingered close together as a clock ticked nearby, the air between them charged. Both their hearts pounded visibly, the silence heavy with unspoken feeling. Something seemed to be building between them, tension rising as she rose and gently set him aside. Flustered, she excused herself to get some night air to cool off the sudden heat while he sat there red-faced. He flailed dramatically, insisting a face that cute was basically cheating, before someone burst dramatically through the door with a sudden announcement that she'd finally thought of his name. She reflected that their encounter had felt like a miracle, refusing to dismiss it as mere coincidence, believing the heavens themselves had blessed that fortunate night. She declared she wanted to honor that miracle by naming him after it, invoking the legendary hero of the past. She announced his name would be Towa Reinstall, the baby staring up in stunned recognition. He silently marveled that 10 years ago in another world, he had died as Towa of Miracles, deeply moved to receive that name again in this new life, thanking Fia warmly as she teased him about how much he seemed to love sharing the legend's name.
In the royal capital of Lucca, elsewhere, his old companions wondered how everyone had fared since he'd sacrificed himself to protect them. They spoke fondly of him as a star watching over them from the night sky, their memories eternal, declaring that Towa of Miracles had become a legend among the heroes. On a quiet evening, one urged the others to come inside from the cold night air, checking if the little ones had fallen asleep. They lingered on old grief, admitting that failing to save him back then still weighed heavily, though one reassured the other they'd go inside now that a hated picture book chronicling the memory had been read. Alone under moonlight too bright to see the stars, he reflected that Towa had entrusted this world to him, vowing not to waste the life his best friend had given them, bound together forever in memory. 10 years since Towa became a star, one asked wistfully if it was boring up there, admitting through tears that the stars themselves were lost to the moonlight. His old comrades still didn't know of the hero's return after 10 years, while Arios and Liliana teased from a balcony, urging someone to jump in. He recalled a past adventure, the sea parting before them toward a treasure chest, until a mysterious voice asked them not to rush in. They ran toward a beach, a strange presence looming ahead. A bird was struck down mid-flight, its cries piercing the forest's tense quiet. Vampire hunters cornered Fia, sneering that killing her and the child would net a huge bounty, dismissing her stored blood as proof of her nature. She unleashed a devastating attack, wings and debris erupting as she moved to shield the child. The hunters mocked her protectiveness, confident she'd sacrifice herself, while the boy begged them to listen. He was human. She snapped back, declaring him human with a bright future, furious at men who wore human skin but acted like beasts. She vowed to reap their futures if they tried to steal his. Fighting them off, Fia noted the enemy's mixed races oddly resembled Towa's old comrades, then turned to reassure him softly that she'd protect him.
He recalled how his old party of 5 had been formed from many races, tasked with subjugating the Demon King, made up of 3 humans, 1 elf, and 1 succubus. He realized with unease that the enemies now targeting Fia matched that same composition exactly. They called out for everyone to fall into formation, wondering how she could possibly overcome being outnumbered 5 to 1. They arranged themselves into what they dubbed the Night Charm formation, ready to face the odds together. He mused skeptically about a succubus taking the tank role, comparing the tactic to Lilith's from his previous life, surprised the shield bearer had ceded that position to her instead. She proved to be an evasion-type tank, scattering illusory decoys to draw enemy attacks while dodging effortlessly. Lilith used her charm ability to draw enemy attention, luring them in while gracefully evading even those who broke through her illusions. Even her own allies found themselves captivated, the battlefield transforming as if it had become her personal ballroom. An enemy furiously vowed to destroy her, threatening to toy with her mind first, while Fia gently reassured the child that anyone besides the succubus wouldn't matter, but warned him urgently never to meet the succubus's gaze directly. A blinding flash of charm magic erupted, the enemy's eyes glowing with menace as the spell took hold. Fia struck out with a powerful blow, energy crackling violently around her. Enemies cried out in agony, their vision stolen as chaos erupted across the battlefield. Her phantom decoys vanished one by one as an enemy accused her of cowardice for stealing their sight, only to be struck down mid-complaint. Another accused her of mocking them with mere visual tricks, unaware her battering technique was very real and closing in fast. Fia readied herself to go on the offensive, her allies noting that no succubus could match Lilith's level of disruption, yet marveling at how overwhelmingly strong Fia herself was.
An enemy grew dizzy and disoriented, confused by a curse spell that had inflicted a drunken state upon their party, distracting them from the real threat. Fia held the child close protectively as chaos raged around them, shielding him from the violence. One ally fired a precise, powerful shot, dropping an enemy who screamed out in pain. Fia unleashed an electrifying strike, remarking coolly that she'd finally confirmed they were indeed vampire hunters. She struck the final blow with satisfaction, declaring it repayment for everything they'd put her through. She unleashed her ultimate technique, thorny vines and blades cutting through everything in their path. Her devastating skill, Crim Rosalind, tore through the battlefield in a storm of destruction. Enemies were caught helplessly in the onslaught, thorned tendrils and blades ravaging their ranks. The attack crashed down with overwhelming force, sealing the enemy's fate beneath her power. One by one, the enemies fell impaled upon the thorns, their forms silhouetted against the devastation. Catching her breath afterward, Fia let out a small sigh of relief as the fight came to an end. Watching in awe, someone remarked that Fia was no ordinary person, having once been feared as the next-generation vampire queen, while others questioned whether such an overwhelming display was overkill. Wounded from a silver bullet especially effective against vampires, Fia struggled to recover until the baby offered his own blood again, insisting she use it. She gratefully accepted, careful not to waste a single drop, marveling quietly at what a kind child he was. Kneeling exhausted amid the thorned roses, she fed quietly, murmuring contentedly as she regained her strength. Elsewhere, night fell over the royal capital of Lucca, where Saren's Magic Research Institute stood illuminated beneath a crescent moon. Lilith visited Saren at her research institute to deliver the monthly support invoice, only to mention offhandedly that she had sensed Toa's presence the week before. Saren, startled, admitted the same strange sensation had reached her, unable to explain how Toa could be near when he was supposed to be gone. Tapping a page from an old record, Saren reasoned aloud that resurrection and reincarnation were unheard of, yet everything pointed to Toa somehow returning after a decade. Elsewhere, another woman reflected in her study that she too was certain Toa had come back, having felt his presence at what seemed to be the very same moment as the others. The two women agreed that only they could truly understand him, convinced no one else shared that connection. Each dwelled on the idea that she and Toa were joined by a fated bond, a certainty that comforted them both. A radiant silhouette flared with light, described as undeniable proof of that same destined connection. Meanwhile, monstrous winged harpies shrieked and dove through the forest as smaller birds scattered in alarm. A young warrior cut through the attacking harpies in a flash of coordinated slashes, dropping them with practiced ease. Watching from nearby, an observer noted how much his skill had grown, remarking that a full decade had passed since his infancy in this world. Now level 14 with Spark and Flash Jab, Toa noted 20 years had passed since the Demon King's fall, his growth this time far faster thanks to Fia's training. He and Fia had moved from the forest into the royal capital of Lucca, settling into their new life as she asked what he wanted for dinner. Walking through the crowd, he marveled that his vampire mother chose to live openly among humans for his sake, telling her he only wanted her to live freely. He noted she hadn't aged a day in 10 years, easily winning over the humans around them despite curious stares. Bathing and walking together, the two drew looks for how affectionate they were, though he privately admitted the closeness felt like a bit much.
Wanting to confirm something, he went out alone for the second time, having already handled his errands at the library on his first outing. Yet running through the new city, he felt strangely unbothered by its unfamiliarity. Recognizing a bridge and road despite their odd warped shapes, he grew certain he knew this place. He realized with a jolt the cityscape matched his old birthplace, Feldum, now renamed Lucca. He understood his death had triggered 3 major changes, solving the mystery he'd researched at the library the week before. The Demon King's self-destruction had deformed the land so severely that maps needed redrawing across the whole territory. King Astram had since abdicated, entrusting the throne to hero Arios for his role in defeating the Demon King, with Liliana now standing beside him as queen. For his first act as king, Arios surprisingly renamed the capital from Feldum to Lucca. Puzzled ministers asked why, until Liliana realized Lucca meant bringer of light, a clear nod to Toa. Trembling, Arios admitted Toa had guided them even through hardship, and that the kingdom now needed that same light to rebuild. Vowing to watch over the kingdom they meant to revive, Arios silently begged Toa to keep watching over them. Elsewhere, young Toa closed a book, quietly wishing to light up the kingdom's future himself. Wandering the unchanged church grounds, he noted wirely how stylishly sentimental Arios had gotten. Recalling a vision of himself praying after his reincarnation, he now stood outside the church intending to confirm something for himself. Reaching toward the past, he wondered whether a miracle was even happening for him now, remembering the wolves and his own silent infant cries. Praying quietly, Towa wondered if any trace of him still remained even now, as Towa of Miracles. Reaching out uncertainly, he then walked off toward the castle grounds. There, he came upon a statue of the former hero standing before the palace. An old man beside him joked about the statue inspiring his future, but noticed his troubled expression, having only just moved to the area himself. The old man asked if he'd fought with a friend, sensing his mood. Towa admitted he'd recently learned of his friend's true feelings, but their bond had been severed for 20 years. Even so, he said, he could always remember their fights together, smiling warmly at the memory. The old man remarked on his sunny smile, then recalled that oddly enough, 20 years ago, Therios himself had stood on that very pedestal. He revealed the statue had originally been planned for someone else entirely, a man known as the Bringer of Miracles, named Towa Mistel. Startled, Towa realized the old man recognized the name, though he clarified it referred to someone else, mistaking him for Queen Liliana's companion. The old man explained that thanks to the hero's noble sacrifice, the party survived, with Towa having died protecting his comrades as the king's former close friend, and people once terrified of monsters now smiled again because of him. Towa trembled quietly, moved to hear himself called a hero known and remembered by everyone. The man added that Towa's grieving family, the Mistels, had clashed with the king over rights to honor him, so the statue was sadly never built. Gritting his teeth, Towa apologized silently to Arios, furious at his own selfish former family for interfering, even after his death. The old man sighed that he'd still love to pray at such a statue if it were ever built, then wished Towa well as they parted. Towa thanking him for the story. He recalled the twin legends of Arios, the hero of light, and himself, the hero of shadows, comrades of light and shadow entrusted with saving the world. Running off, he admitted to himself that no one would believe his true identity even if he told them, though he longed to see Arios again. At a nearby guild, a hooded appraiser marveled at his outstanding skills for a 10-year-old, though he could hardly prove who he really was. She was further stunned to see he possessed 2 skills, Spark and Flash Slash, plus a mysterious third one. Peering closer, she found that skill's name unreadable, broken, and completely unknown, leaving her puzzled by its strange existence. Towa realized he was no longer the Towa of Miracles, feeling unworthy to stand beside King Arios. Falling through the sky, he felt there was nowhere left in this world for him to return to. Troubled, he found a blood-red rose petal, and a memory of being welcomed home surfaced in his mind. He walked back through the city toward home. Fia greeted him warmly, though she noticed at once how exhausted he looked. At a flower stall, he bought a Reino rose, told it symbolized warm affection. He silently vowed that even if reincarnation had cut his ties to his old comrades, and even if he lost his miracle power, some things wouldn't change. Thinking of the woman who'd stood by him for 10 years, he gave Fia the flowers, thanking her, and she told him the rose meant deep affection, calling him her son. Holding the bouquet, he resolved to make Fia his top priority, insisting he was no longer the old Towa Mistel, or the legendary Towa of Miracles, but simply an ordinary boy named Towa Rainstal. Later, he told Fia about the capital's renaming and the statue planned in his honor, and she hugged him tightly, saying it made her incredibly happy. Towa quietly asked forgiveness for no longer being someone worthy of standing at Arios' side. On the balcony, Arios reflected on how happy he'd been to fight beside Towa as a comrade, though things were different now, each of them walking their own separate paths, wishing each other well from afar. Later, playing with his young friends at the beach, Towa was pestered by them to use his miracle power for mischief, teased for supposedly wanting to peek at the princess. Amid the group's rowdy, mischievous joking, Towa was accused of being dishonest as they pulled him along toward more trouble. A prank went awry, ending in a comically monstrous mishap rather than the desired result. An unusual glow appeared, said to be a mark unique to demoness kind, a sign of having found one's destined partner. A pair of hands reached toward each other, bathed in a halo of light, said to be the way such loved ones were sometimes drawn together. Elsewhere, it was explained that this glow could also be a symptom of something else entirely, a warning sign in certain people. That night, back at the house, Fia seemed unable to hold back any longer, her composure slipping as Towa called out to her in concern. Towa found himself unsettled by an intense, searching look from Fia, uncertain what lay behind it. Standing outside near the window, he lingered quietly, lost in thought as morning approached. Birds chirped over the rooftops as a new day began. Reflecting privately, he told himself that anything beyond the bond of parent and child was off limits between them, no matter that they weren't connected by blood, troubled by how intensely she'd reacted the night before while feeding on his blood.
Shaking off his unease, he stood before the grand castle and wondered aloud where he ought to go that day. Walking through the capital with a companion, he mused that if he was lucky, he might come across familiar faces from his old life, since this city had once been his hometown. Toa tried to recall a certain place, while two striking women nearby speculated they'd seen a boy like him in a past life. He wandered into the lively Adventurers Guild, greeted warmly as he left. Amid the tavern crowd, he was pulled into a chaotic celebration of food and drink. Surrounded by new companions, he laughed along under the night sky. Alone afterward, he considered checking how the world had changed after 20 years. Heading toward the guild, he suddenly collided with someone. He stumbled into a tall stranger, quickly apologizing. Startled, he recognized her, Lilith. Her appearance hadn't changed at all. He apologized again, asking if she was all right despite the 20 years since their separation by death. She stared at him intensely, and he flinched, caught off guard. Grabbed suddenly, Toa stammered, confused by the touch on his face. Lilith stared, murmuring he looked strangely similar to someone. Trembling, she studied him closely. Old memories flashed through her mind. Familiar faces, a sword, a shared past. More memories surfaced, of battles and companions. Her aura glowed as emotion rose within her. Startled, Toa wondered if she'd really said he looked similar to someone. He considered revealing the truth, his second reincarnation, once an ordinary student from another era, doubting even Lilith would believe something so absurd. He'd meant to give up on reconnecting with people like Arios, yet wondered desperately if she'd believe him if he confessed who he truly was. Lilith exclaimed that this child must be Toa reverted, just as something eerie stirred in the shadows nearby. Rain fell around them as their hands reached toward each other in a quiet, emotional moment. Lilith wept, declaring that even if he vanished, they would remain together forever, dream or illusion, moved and grateful for how deeply she felt for him. A title flashed, The Halo of Matrimony. The strange glow appeared again, said to mark a demoness's fated lover, and Toa noticed with alarm that Lilith's stomach itself seemed to be glowing. Panting and in tears, Lilith seemed overwhelmed, as those afflicted by this phenomenon were said to fall into madness. Her hand gripped his tightly, as her heart pounded visibly with emotion. Her eyes went wide, her heart racing as the moment overwhelmed her. She reflected that this strange, fated reunion after 20 years was completely overturning her destiny. Elsewhere, a surreal, symbolic vision unfolded of gears turning and time itself spinning backward. Something that was supposed to have ended long ago seemed instead to be beginning anew. A row of faces from the old party appeared in sequence, each marked by their own history. A narrator's voice announced that the heroic tale, once thought finished, was now beginning to weave a new continuation. In a flashback, young Liliana insisted on joining the fight against the Demon King herself, despite her father's worry about her going alone. Startled onlookers reacted to news of hiring a rumored swordsman for the journey, with the king dismissing concerns about underestimating him. Amused and exasperated, Liliana watched as the swordsman charmed her with a small gift and a flirtatious gesture. Back in the present, Toa remained unaware that the strange glowing phenomenon Lilith displayed even existed, silently wondering what it meant, as it was revealed to be called the Bright of Engage. Nearby onlookers murmured that the boy beside Lilith looked remarkably like Toa himself, as though he'd somehow become a child again, noting that the light was said to draw loved ones closer, though it could also drive the afflicted toward madness. Flustered, Lilith reacted with visible embarrassment as attention turned toward her and the boy. A passerby asked in confusion who exactly Lilith seemed to be talking to, as if speaking to someone unseen. Toa told himself he was just an ordinary boy with no connection to Lilith, while a companion apologized for spacing out, insisting the child hadn't bumped into her on purpose. Lilith asked gently if he was hurt, and he was startled, realizing it was the first time anyone had ever called him boy. He recalled being one of the 5 heroes in his past life, dead 20 years now, while Lilith was celebrated as the nation's savior, leaving him unsure how to even approach her. As they walked off, a companion warned the child to watch where he ran, while Towa thought there was no way to prove his reincarnation to anyone here. Lilith invited him for a walk. He hesitated, telling himself not to follow strangers, but curiosity won. He agreed, in exchange for hearing who she'd been talking to earlier, recognizing her privately as his former comrade. Lilith admitted she sometimes saw the illusion of someone important who died 20 years ago, leaving him stunned, realizing she meant him. She reached toward him, wondering if his death had changed her, then laughed it off as a passing spell. He apologized for the heavy topic. Gripping his arm, he told himself she likely wouldn't believe him even if he revealed the truth. Realizing they hadn't introduced themselves, Lilith gave her name as the succubus Lilith and asked his. He answered simply that he was called Towa. Lilith explained she'd been named by her foster parents after the hero Towa of Miracles, admitting she was still surprised by the coincidence. She confessed his face reminded her strongly of the Towa-san from her past. A carriage screeched to a sudden stop nearby.
A nobleman stepped out, recognizing Lilith as one of the 5 heroes, addressing himself as Gario of the Mistal Baron family, honored she'd remember someone she'd only passed once. Towa's expression darkened sharply upon hearing the name Mistal. Gario Mistal stood dramatically before the boy near Lilith, narration revealing him as the disgraced heir of the house the boy had once fled during his first reincarnation, his arrogance unchanged. At first, Gario didn't recognize him, simply telling him to get lost like some random brat in his way. Grabbing the boy's face, Gario paused, visibly unsettled by something eerily familiar in his features. The scene jumped 25 years into the past, to the gated Mistal estate, as Gario's voice recalled that face reminding him of some unlucky little dog. In that memory, the boy, chained like property, was coldly told that even his food wasn't free. When he failed to eat clean enough, Gario struck him down without hesitation. Left battered among bones and scraps, the boy was mockingly told to give thanks for the life he was receiving, then sharply silenced. A fan-wielding woman nearby called the abuse a whip of love, praising Gario's strict discipline. She added, smirking, that such love would end with the boy completely breaking. Chained and trembling, the boy silently wondered what he'd done to deserve this, as Gario's mocking laughter rang out around him. The boy silently wondered who was to blame for his suffering, fate, his relatives, or simply his own birth. He shook off the thought, refusing to dwell on it. He recalled escaping the Mistal house using his hidden miracle power, the estate now shown in ruins. Gario ranted that the gutter dog had died owing his family a debt of gratitude. Lilith calmly reminded him that Towa had said no such debt existed. Gario scoffed that without profit, the title Towa of Miracles meant nothing, prompting the boy to murmur her name.
Gario kept insulting the boy, calling him trash and not even worth calling a mutt. Lilith warned she chooses her company carefully, unfazed by his mockery. Smirking, Gario implied Towa had never counted as a person to him. In a burst of wind, Lilith swept the boy away, shielding him from Gario. The young man watches in surprise as his vampire companion fiercely declares his enemies are her own. He reminisces about his past vows to use his miraculous power only for good and protect the innocent. A tense close-up captures her resolute expression as she reflects on their deep bond. She expresses intense hostility against those who threaten him, leaving him in quiet amazement. An aggressive rival shouts angry threats while speeding away in a carriage. The young man thanks her for protecting him, making her blush and wish for a more intimate name. She sheds tears of affection while accepting his closeness. He wears a gentle, relieved smile, feeling a deep sense of peace. She suddenly announces that their time together is up and they must return. With a soft smile and a final wave, she watches him depart. The witch cheerfully waves goodbye, saying they will meet again very soon. A group of companions reacts negatively, questioning how anyone could travel with such a pervert. One companion harshly rejects him, calling him a guy who hits on little girls and refusing to acknowledge his strength. The female companion suddenly realizes in embarrassment that the rumors actually referred to him being overly kind and chivalrous to an elderly woman. The young man wakes up from a dream about his past life and meeting his former comrade, the succubus Lilith. Trapped in a mysterious white space, he wonders where he is while standing near a door. He discovers the door won't open and notices a nearby window shining brightly. He approaches the window with a curious and surprised look.
His expression instantly shifts to absolute shock and horror as he looks through. Peering through the window, he watches in horror as a grinning man in a top hat cruelly burns the back of a bound and chained captive. A hand crushes a small object on the ground, creating a sizzling spark. A chained young boy screams while a grinning face laughs in the background. Several figures in hats laugh heartily over a smoking patch of ground. A young man looks out a window at a building, then turns away, dismissing the memories as worthless. A maid drops her tray and stumbles backward as other patrons react in a busy tavern. The young man glances with annoyance while other patrons cheer nearby. The young man apologizes in a crowded room after accidentally bumping into a maid. People and food fly through the air as the narrator reflects on escaping the Mistle family and relying solely on the power of miracles at the Adventurers Guild. Travelers in armor watch people flying through the air and discuss whether it is a technique different from magic. Armored travelers calmly sit and drink from wooden barrels while chaos unfolds behind them with people flying through the air. Towa's eyes widen in sudden shock as he faces a critical moment near the window. Towa leaps into action as a massive serpent-like monster ambushes him, quickly wrapping its scaly tail around his body. The serpent tightly constricts Towa within its coils, rearing back with sharp claws ready to strike. A young boy screams in chains, while a grinning face laughs in the background. Clenching his hand as a sizzling spark flies, Towa invokes the power of miracles to confront the threat. A colossal beast loomed above him, crackling with dark power as he stood small beneath it. Its body swelled and pulsed in grotesque waves, strange sounds echoing around it. Amid shattering debris, he was flung through the air, blade in hand. Onlookers marveled as the monster's remains turned to glittering jewels. He thought bitterly of a life owing nothing to anyone, able to endure anything as long as his miracle power stayed his own. Angry at his own hesitation, he vowed the power was his alone and broke free of his chains. Two women mocked from afar, dismissing the scattered treasure as some trick. A brash swordsman sneered nearby, plotting with allies to ambush him and steal his spoils. A stark thought surfaced: he would never trust humans again. Chained and weary amid the wreckage, he told himself he needed no one, that being alone was safer than ever risking that pain again. Kneeling amid scattered jewels, he realized hunger would never trouble him again, though the thought left him strangely uneasy. Wandering alone beneath rustling trees, he sighed at the hollow boredom of his solitary days. Watching rabbits play together, he felt a quiet envy at their easy companionship, sniffing back the feeling.
Two armored travelers approached, insisting they meant no harm, while a hot-headed companion needled him to hand over his jewels or get hurt. The women bickered about lawlessness and theft as he simply turned and walked away, prompting one to brand him a coward who only protected himself. Gripping his blade, he doubled back, proving he wasn't the coward they'd assumed. The swordsman boasted that his mere heroic aura had left the boy trembling, while his companion wondered if he was simply unwell. Shadowy figures loomed in his mind, murmuring fear and refusal, echoes of a hell he never wanted to face again. Gritting his teeth against the memory, he declared he'd had enough of humans and wanted nothing more to do with that suffering. Power crackling in his fist, he vowed he'd never deal with humans again. A sudden chill swept over the two women as icy shards tore through the air around them. He unleashed a fierce blizzard, the storm's intensity leaving the two knights unable to move. The women plotted to force him into using his power so they could ambush him. Even as they shouted they meant no harm, the storm growing stronger around them. One knight struck a bold pose amid the flurries, undeterred by the chaos. Startled by the freezing wind, she yelped as her armor flapped in the storm. Gritting through the cold, the other knight turned to face him head-on. Amazed that he could still move within the raging blizzard, the two pressed forward, urging the wind to blow harder. Struggling against the force pushing back at her, one knight begged it to stop advancing. Her boots slid across the frozen ground as she braced against the gale. Confused by their sudden shift, he found the knight kneeling before him, begging him to teach her that very technique. Trailing behind him, one of the knights cheerfully declared she'd accompany him and learn the secret of his technique, only for him to snap at her in irritation. Delighted, she boasted that she'd witnessed the ultimate secret of his skirt-flipping trick, earning her a furious strike from her companion, who branded him a pervert. Amid old wounds and lingering pain, something long buried inside him quietly stirred, though it wasn't anger. Caught coughing awkwardly, he brushed off her concern, insisting nothing was wrong. Despite his protests, the women insisted on following him, refusing to be shaken off as they journeyed together. They bragged about the fame and glory they'd win by defeating the Demon King, dreaming of world peace and statues in their honor. He scoffed inwardly at their naive hope of achieving something so miraculous. Even as he doubted their reckless optimism, he found himself wondering whether his own power might make their dream possible.
His frozen heart began to waver, and for once, their ridiculous dream didn't seem boring to him. Back in town, mischievous children teased one of the women about her underwear, leaving her flustered and embarrassed. The two hurled insults at each other, while a companion warned one that such behavior would come back to haunt her. He noted quietly that weeks with them had softened his old dislike of people. Watching fondly, he admitted their reckless dream had brought welcome excitement to his once dull days. Amused, they teased his rare, endearing side as another played tough with the children nearby. He worried that keeping up with the group's emotional swings would eventually wear him out. As villagers despaired over fleeing the spreading miasma, the group thanked them and rushed toward the danger. The Demon King's leaking power twisted the land into miasma, ruining crops and threatening nearby villages. Hearing cries beyond the gate, they found a small creature stricken by the miasma, debating what to do. Using healing magic, the creature was revived, crying out weakly as it returned to life. They realized it had been separated from its herd, its companions wiped out by the miasma, leaving it alone and frightened. Cradling the little creature, he thought of a pet he'd once kept in his past life, admitting quietly that no one here would understand that world. His companion mentioned once keeping a fairy pet herself, surprising him. She declared she'd care for it until they found its herd, and named it Fair, while another teased that a rough woman like her would never last as a caretaker. Feeling ignored, one companion sulked as the other affectionately cuddled the little fairy. He found her jealousy secretly amusing, while the group noticed another companion sulking over the attention the fairy was getting. Days later, deep in a cavern, they clashed against a massive dragon-like beast. He vowed to force a miracle and break through, taunting the giant creature to stop dodging so easily. As the beast unleashed a crushing blow, his companion invoked wind acceleration magic to boost their speed, startling him. Together they unleashed a devastating twin lightning strike that tore through the enemy. Praised for her magical support, one companion beamed proudly, though another quietly corrected that it had actually been her final blow that felled the enemy. Amid the crackling aftermath of battle, the Golden Knight sighed wearily as the group regrouped near the little fairy. Suddenly the fairy dashed off, prompting a startled chase as one companion called after it in confusion. The knight suggested the fairy might have sensed its own kind nearby, urging everyone to hurry after it. Deeper in the cave, he was tasked with keeping watch over their surroundings while the knight went ahead, laughter echoing faintly in the dark. Reaching the fairy, they asked eagerly if it had found its companions, relieved to have finally caught up. One companion urged the other to calm down and listen closely as tension crept into the air. A monstrous shape loomed nearby, its clacking jaws hinting at the fairy's true fate. A grotesque insectoid horror emerged from the shadows, towering over the fleeing little fairy. Caught in its assault, one companion was struck down mid-motion by the creature's razor-sharp claw. Confirming only a single monster lurked nearby, the Golden Knight lunged into battle as the little fairy fled in panic, everyone shouting a warning to protect it. Amid the chaos, the fairy was struck down, sending the group into a desperate, frantic clash against the beast. Gripping the fairy's lifeless form tightly, he unleashed a devastating explosion of power against the enemy, his intentions hidden in shadow. Stunned and heartbroken, one companion could only whisper the fairy's name as its small body dropped before her.